Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Green Cards to Greenback Show. My name is Nestor Vargas. I am a humble host. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys are doing great. This shows where financially successful first-generation immigrants reveal the steps they took to avoid low-paying jobs, build generational wealth, and attain the American dream. Additionally, we discuss investing and retirement planning topics. In this episode today, we're going to talk about what happens to your Social Security benefits if you move abroad. Alrighty, let's get started. Many people who retire really look forward to traveling in retirement. That's no news to anyone. But more and more people are actually retiring overseas. And in part, it's a way to stretch their savings. What happens to your federal benefits like your Social Security and Medicare benefits when you leave the country? Look, the short answer is that although Social Security benefits are available to retirees in other countries, Medicare is not. But we're going to talk about Social Security today. First, I'm going to start really high level, letting you know where checks can be sent to. And then we're going to talk about eligibility depending on your citizenship status. We're going to wrap up with taxes and talk about how your benefits are going to be taxed. Once a retired person has been outside of the U.S. for 30 days in a row, he or she is considered outside the United States, and the rules for collecting benefits, Social Security benefits, apply. And so the Social Security Administration actually is able to send checks to anyone who is eligible for benefits and is living abroad. However, there are a few countries where the Social Security Administration will say, nope, absolutely not. You're not going to get those checks. We can't send them to you. And those are Cuba and North Korea. So I doubt that there's a lot of North Korean people listening to me. If you are, hello. But there's probably a lot of Cuban people listening to. Just make sure you know that if you actually go back to Cuba to live there, you're not going to be able to get your checks. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get those checks back. You actually will get those back payments sent to you once you move to a country where the U.S. can send payments to. In addition to those countries I just discussed, the Social Security Administration generally, that's a key word, generally, does not send checks to Cambodia, Vietnam, or other areas that were in the former Soviet Union, other than Armenia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Russia. But retirees actually may be able to apply for an exception. And if that exception gets granted, some of the conditions that you may have to abide by is actually appearing in person at the U.S. Embassy either monthly or every 6 months. They just want to make sure you're alive and that we're actually sending checks to real people, right? Now that we've talked about where the Social Security Administration will send checks to, now let's talk about what happens depending on your citizenship status. Retirees who are U.S. citizens are entitled to continue receiving benefits for as long as they live outside the United States. So you're a U.S. citizen, no problem. You're fine. You can live outside the United States. You'll get your checks unless you're in Cuba, North Korea, or those other countries that I talked about. The other thing that I want to talk about is what happens if you are not a U.S. citizen, right? Citizens of other countries who receive Social Security benefits may have some restrictions on how long they can receive benefits while outside the United States. And the rules are actually kind of quirky, a little complicated. The great thing is that the Social Security Administration has a great PDF, about 40 pages long. I read it. The first time didn't make a lot of sense. The second time made a lot more sense, but it really started making a lot more sense once I used the calculator they have on the website, which I have actually put links to all the tools and resources on my show notes. So make sure to go greencardstogreenbacks.com, check it out. It'll be a lot of great resources. Let me kind of give you an example or a few examples that I think will help you make sense out of these rules. So let's just say for a moment that I am a Colombian citizen. By the way, if you've got dual citizenship like I do, it doesn't impact your eligibility as long as one of those citizenships is U.S. And so let's say for a moment that I'm a Colombian citizen and I'm collecting Social Security benefits here in the U.S. and I decide to move to Portugal. If you haven't checked out Portugal, great place to be, really cheap Western European country, beautiful beaches, best of all, free health insurance once you're there, and you can qualify for it. So a lot of people move there for that reason. We're going to actually use the calculator here live in this podcast to help you kind of understand what questions you're going to be asked. And so we can kind of maybe help you understand how easy it is to use. So I'm on the tool here. The tool is called Payment Abroad Screening Tool. First question that it'll ask me is, have you been or do you plan to go outside the United States? I'm going to go ahead and choose yes and click continue. And then it's going to ask me, are you a U.S. citizen? And in this instance, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to click continue. Then it'll ask me if I'm currently receiving Social Security, either retirement benefits or disability benefits. On my own record, I'm going to say yes. And then the next question here, by the way, we're about halfway through the screening tool. That's how easy and great it is. It'll ask me select the country or location outside the United States where you're going to stay or plan to go. In this option, I'm going to go ahead and click Portugal. All right, here we go, Portugal. And here's what I get. It says, since you are a resident of one of the countries with which the United States has a Social Security totalization agreement, your payment will continue as long as you're a resident of an international Social Security totalization agreement country. Oh man, that's a mouthful. And it's important to kind of figure this out. And if you don't know what the totalization agreements are, go back to episode 002 or episode 2. Talk about how great the totalization agreements are, what that is. In this instance, it says, hey, you're good to go, right? So that's great. Now let's use another example. So now I'm actually an Indian citizen. So namaste for all of you who are listening, who live and I've only lived in the United States for 8 years. Okay, that's important. And I actually just want to move to Germany. Maybe I just want to get some amazing beer. Maybe I want to get some amazing pretzels, get some great sausage, and just enjoy the German culture, right? By the way, as a side fact, Germany is part of the U.S. Social Security totalization agreement. So you think, hey, I'm golden, right? Because the system just told us that, hey, I'm fine as long as I'm living in one of those countries. Well, surprisingly, no, I would be wrong. I would not be able to collect Social Security benefits. What? Why? Let's talk about that. There are two things happening here. One, because I'm an Indian citizen, I'm a citizen of a country where the U.S. Social Security Administration requires the following to be true. And the following is that I would have to have worked at least enough to collect 40 work credits or have lived in the United States for at least 10 years, which basically is the same because you can only collect 4 credits per year. And so, you have to live in the United States for at least 10 years. But I guess what they're saying here is that you don't actually have to have worked to collect the full 40 credits. To collect Social Security, you at least have to live 10 years. So maybe that's for someone who's collecting disability benefits. And so that's one, right? I'm just a citizen of a country where the U.S. has Social Security Administration has a weird rule. And 2, I'm actually headed to a country where there's a weird rule also, even though they're part of the U.S. totalization agreement, that there's a weird rule. And that country is Germany. And there's other countries. Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, and Switzerland are all part of the U.S. totalization agreement, but have this weird rule. The tool, I basically went with the tool, and the tool said, nope, you're not eligible. Your payments will actually stop 6 months after you have lived in that country, full 6 calendar months. Let's kind of use that situation again, but we're going to kind of change it just a little bit. So what happens if I actually decide, as an Indian citizen, decide to move to Italy because I want to eat some amazing pasta and, go see all the beautiful sights and drink some amazing wine, right? What happens if I actually move to Italy? Same situation. I haven't lived in the U.S. for 10 years. I'm an Indian citizen and I'm moving to Italy. Well, I actually, go figure, yes, I can actually continue to collect my Social Security benefits. So again, really quirky rules. That's why I encourage you to use that calculator. But more importantly, I encourage you to work with your financial advisor, someone who's an expert with working with immigrants. There's a lot of planning opportunities there that could be missed, but certainly not impossible to actually be able to use some of those dollars somewhere else that may allow you to live a better lifestyle that you may live here in the US, or maybe just because you want to move out there, be closer to family. All right. So we've talked about where checks can be sent to and then what the eligibility is depending on your US status, country of citizen, and where you're going to head to. Give you some examples there. So now let's talk about taxes. Okay. I know you love paying taxes. I know you do. Said no one. So let's talk about taxes. If you are a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident of the United States, basically a green card holder, you are subject to U.S. income tax law no matter where you live. So you always need to file the U.S. tax return as well as where you're living. Don't forget to do that. We're going to talk about that more in a later episode, so stay tuned. What that means is that your worldwide income, including up to 85% of your Social Security benefit, may be subject to federal income tax. Now, it doesn't really happen very often where 85% of your Social Security benefit gets taxed, but it's up to 85%. And there's some rules around it. I'm actually going to I already have a blog post. I'll post that blog on the website. And, I think it'll be a good resource for people to understand how Social Security is taxable. If you're not a U.S. citizen or you're not a permanent resident of the United States, the U.S. is going to withhold 30% federal income tax from that 85% of your benefit, Social Security benefit, unless you meet the conditions of an income tax treaty that reduces your tax rate. Basically, countries like Canada, Egypt, Germany, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Japan, Romania, and the United Kingdoms have a treaty which basically brings your percentage down to 25.5. So you get a 5% reduction of withholding there. Now, remember, I'm talking about withholding, not tax. Withholding and tax, two different things. Withholding just means that they're withholding the taxes until they figure out how much you actually owe, right? Taxes is you're being taxed at that rate. They're completely different. All right. So now let's talk about Switzerland, actually, because under Switzerland, the tax treaty is a little different. Benefits paid to residents of Switzerland who are not U.S. citizens are actually taxed at a rate of 15%. So that's much lower than what some of you may actually be subject to. Now, in addition, the portion of Social Security benefits based on U.S. federal, state, or local government employment, and this is for my Indian citizens, by the way, the portion of Social Security benefits based on U.S. federal or state or local government employment paid both to individuals who are both nationals and residents of India are exempt from this tax. So that's cool. Now, this list of countries is subject to change, and I've actually linked a great calculator again called the Alien Tax Screening Tool to help you determine if your benefits are subject to this non-resident alien tax withholding or if you qualify for a tax treaty benefit. So definitely head to greencardstogreenbacks.com and check it out. Okay, my beautiful people. So as I'm wrapping up the show, I want to leave you with a quote that really stood out to me during my reading. And that is, human beings are a work in progress that mistakenly think they are finished. I don't know about you, but I feel like as we get older, we lose the ability to imagine and really imagine ourselves being a different person or doing something completely different than what we've been doing. I feel like that's how we get stuck in these jobs that you may hate, or you get depressed in retirement with nothing to do. I talk to a lot of people who are planning to retire and, I want to start envisioning what their retirement is like. And, I'll ask what their plans are for retirement are. And they're like, oh, I want to play a little golf and travel a little bit and play with the grandkids. And hey, that's amazing. That's going to get really old really quick. And what happens is, you might get depressed. You start sitting down on that chair watching TV or not moving. And, all of a sudden you just kind of wither away. There's always something meaningful you can accomplish no matter how old you are, what situation you're in. Remember, human beings are works in progress that mistakenly think they're finished. Don't think you're finished. There's always something you can be doing. Alrighty, my friends, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please remember to tell your friends about the show if you're enjoying it. Remember to visit greencardstogreenbacks.com for amazing resources and also resources that I mentioned on this episode. Let's go have a great day and let's go make those greenbacks.